Hi, welcome back to our video series of how to get started in SCA cut and thrust with a longsword. Video 1 was basic cutting mechanics, how to open and close the hands, extend the arms, support with the body, and cut through nice straight lines that provide leverage of attack and defense. We're going to use all of those things continuing in our practice. Today we're going to start discussing stance and stepping and how that calibrates our cuts, and how to use this motion when we address a target so that those mechanics will be fluid and available to us when we go into our combat training. Okay, so let's start by getting back into that nice solid guard that we were looking at in the last video. Very basic, we're not going to get too complicated with our guards, but fundamentally we're going to start with our feet about shoulder width apart. We're going to be on the balls of our feet. That's the front half of the foot, right? So we're not standing out here on our heels. Our feet are tucked underneath us. That way we're nice and loose, athletic. And if you use period footwear, you'll notice with turn shoes and everything, you really want to stay on the balls of your feet. You look at medieval footwork. Their heels are coming up as they're moving. This allows us to create rotation and create stability by using our knees and our feet and our ankles in ways that are appropriate for this sword fighting. We'll discuss more as we start going into stepping about why it's really important that we stay on the balls of our feet. But for now, balls of our feet are about shoulder width apart, and we're just going to drop one foot back, and we're going to bring our sword up to our shoulder, right? This is kind of an early medieval German guard. It's not resting on our shoulder, it's not hanging out our back, it's mostly straight up and down. Our elbows are down, they're not out. This allows us to be nice and compressed for when we want to expand into that cut. When you have these weight back guards, a lot of times what I do is I'll shift my weight to about 2/3 of the way back. So 2/3 of my weight is on my back foot. So I've got about 2/3 of the space in front of me and 1/3 of the space behind me. This is sort of the golden rule of ratios. Find this a lot in art, certainly find it throughout the Middle Ages. So that when my weight is back, when my sword is up, I've got about 2/3 of my weight on my back foot and about 1/3 of the weight on my front foot. This allows me to move my feet very comfortably and stay away from my opponent. When I transition my weight forwards, like in a cut, we transition that weight to 2/3 forwards and 1/3 back. So we don't get all of our weight onto one foot. That allows us to keep moving our feet and keep stepping wherever we want, and you can make nice little feet rotations to help support that action. So we're still making that cut, we're just making that hip extension. We're using our feet to support that weight transition, right? So we come back to our guard, and we're nice and easy, and then we can uncurl into that blow, right? Do that facing forwards, nice good stance. Right? We talked about transitioning the foot going forwards, so when I'm in that nice good stance, as I start my action and I start to uncurl that hip, I'm just going to follow my sword with my foot, and I'm going to land in a nice easy step forwards. This supports the sword as I go. A couple of things to think about when we're doing this in any cut is I really want, when I make that step, is I want my foot to land as my sword is making contact with the target. So if I were addressing a bag, say, and you see I've got my stand-in bag today, is when I make contact with the target, that's when I want my foot to land. Right? So when I come to address the target, I start uncurling that sword, and I follow that. I'm not getting out and letting and following up, but everything sort of lands at the same time. So I start sword back, and since my sword's making a big action, my foot is going to make a smaller action to keep up with it. Here we go. We want a nice, good, solid foot, sword, all land at the same time. So when I land, that's kind of where I want to time my actions. Right? Same thing. Coming forwards, I'm here. If I make a bigger blow all the way through, I'm still contacting here and then following through, letting my weight sink onto my forward leg. I'm still deep out. I'm still about 2/3 of my weight knee, shoulder, toe alignment, right? It's even in a deeper stance. So we start with a nice even stance. And if we want to make deeper blows, if we want to make a deeper step, right, we're going to let our body sink into that step. We're still making contact here, right? So my sword is extended. I'm out making contact as my foot hits the ground. The goal of this step is that I'm not well extended with my foot. We talked about this in the last video. One of the alignment tricks I use is that the shoulder, knee, toe alignment, which means pulling my foot back. What this allows me to do is that as I come out, because I'm on the ball of my foot, I've actuated my ankle, and I'm no longer creating that shearing torque that everybody's worrying about with that big step. If my foot's out here and I'm pushing my knee forwards, this creates shearing torque. It can really hurt your knee, right? But by pulling my foot in and allowing my foot to actuate at the ankle, it creates the bending action in the knee. That is the way your knee is designed to work, and we see this in athletics all the time. A nice little bend forwards. We can get a really nice deep knee bend. We can stay on the balls of our feet. We're not going to slip and slide. We stay stable. So when we start with our basic stepping, these are the mechanic points that we want to be hitting, right? So we start back in my guard. I start extending that sword. I'm turning that hip, and I'm following through, landing on the ball of my foot, letting my knee bend, and keeping my shoulder forwards over my knee. My weight is 2/3 loaded onto my front foot and still 1/3 onto my back foot. Okay? These are our straight steps, and it goes with both feet. When we start stepping forwards, 1, then I can come back to guard on my left side. Then I extend that sword forwards again as I cut. 2, I land on my left foot. So we can start working on basic forward stepping. 1, 2. We can incorporate that with any series of cuts we want to do. So instead of cutting downward, I'm now cutting diagonal, upwards. 1, 2. Coming back to my guard. So if I want to do this, I'm going to start here. I'm just going to cut across. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now that we've got our forward stepping actions in, we can start looking at our backward stepping actions, right? What we want to do is essentially the reverse of what we've done before. So I shouldn't be in guard out here, but if I want to step backwards from an extended position, I'm going to transition my weight and keep my hips back, and I'm going to turn my feet back to the guard that I was in here. So when I step forwards, my knee-toe alignment happens. When I step backwards, my weight comes back to 2/3 to my back foot, right? So I'm here, I want to step backwards. I'm just going to take this foot, I'm going to pass it back. This foot rotates back to place. And you see that I'm rotating on the balls of my feet as I'm making stepping actions so that I keep my alignment. One thing I don't want to be doing as I'm stepping is over-rotating, and now I'm pointing my back to my opponent. This is no good, right? I don't want to be stepping here because now there's nowhere for me to go with this foot, and I have to make another big wide step. I want to keep that 45 degrees, stepping forwards, stepping backwards, forwards, forwards, backwards. All of this can be incorporated into cutting action. Okay, so that's it for basic straight stepping forwards and backwards. It's not super complicated. We want to keep our hips out and angled and open, so we want to make sure when we step that we're not over rotating and becoming narrow in that fencing guard. So every time we step, when we come out, we want to make sure our feet are staying on those rails. If I step backwards, I don't want to over-rotate and again become linear as I go backwards, and now I can't move my feet, I can't pass my feet, right? So make sure that when you're stepping, you're keeping nice and even, and that you're including the weight shift in your stroke. So if I'm reaching out with my sword, even if I'm stepping backwards, as I'm cutting out with that sword, my weight is forwards, and I'm stepping backwards, and then my weight comes backwards as I go into guard. So as I come forwards, my weight goes forwards because I'm throwing that blow, and then I come backwards into guard. And same thing when I go backwards, the weight of my sword and my body goes forwards, and I start to step backwards as I come back into guard. 1, out, 2, back. So practice those steps forwards and back, making multiple steps, making multiple angles with your cuts, both diagonal down, diagonal up, horizontal, vertical, all of those things. And in the next video, we'll start talking about angular stepping and stepping to triangles and rotating our body so that we can address a stationary target and include that in our training. So stay safe, practice well. Let me know if you guys have any questions or comments. I'd love to hear from you, and we'll see you soon.